Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more through news and headlines. I am Daniel, and today we are going through sector number 450, as we have someone who did one of the Snyder Cut, released the Snyder Cut. That's how you know. It wasn't Restore the Snyderverse, it was Release the Snyder Cut Roundtables. And Vega is on The Reasons I'm Broke podcast as the co-host this week. Welcome to the show, Vega.
Thank you for having me on, Ben. Thank you for having me on, man. It's an honor.
This is another individual who was on maybe I can get one or two of these guys on the show if I get lucky, and thankfully Vega was gracious enough to show up on the show this week and help out with what we have for the Brokehead Core this week. So I'm excited to jump right in and get your take on these headlines. Kicking it off with San Diego Comic-Con. We know that it was canceled a few weeks back. The organizers have, though, since announced that they are going to have a Thanksgiving weekend Comic-Con 3-day event. So they're going forward. They're looking at I don't know if they're looking at the spike numbers or kind of the laws in California and how they can sort of make this event work. Do you, I'm assuming you've been to conventions as a lover of all of these DC things and as a follower of the DC Extended Universe especially, have you been to Comic-Con or to any of your local conventions?
Local, yes. I have yet to make it to the big ones, That was on like my bucket list or to-do list, right before COVID. It was like crazy because that was literally my plan. Like that year, like I gotta go to, San Diego Comic-Con. Me and my friends were like getting ready to do it, and next thing you know, boom, COVID came, and it's like, So yeah, but local, yeah, and conventions are awesome. You come across amazing people, cosplayers. It's a great thing.
How do you feel about the conventions sort of taking this step forward? And Comic-Con isn't the only one, but I feel that as soon as Comic-Con announces theirs, a bunch of smaller ones are going to be like, okay, well, let's kind of follow their lead and start planning ours out for the fall or winter. Do you think it's a little too early still to start planning for it, or do you think we're kind of moving ahead on this thing? People are getting vaccinated and more places are opening up. Do you think we're at about the right time?
I think so. I was, to be honest with you, I was one of those people that, like, even throughout COVID, I was still pretty actively out there. I was just, following the CDC guidelines, wear a mask. Whether the social distancing was a real thing, and like as far as like the 6 feet or not, I don't know. But masks for sure. Constantly washing my hands. Always, whenever I had the chance. And it was more of those things where it's like I felt like you just have to be conscious of like not touching your face if you're touching stuff before, prior to washing your hands, or using hand sanitizer. So I've been one of those like graciously. Thank God I haven't gotten it, and I've still been pretty active out there. So I don't know how it works, but I think with the whole vaccinations as well, though, that does give more ease of mind. So yeah, like you said, I'm pretty sure they're gauging it by the numbers. They're gauging it by the, whatever laws, are happening in California, whatever surrounding that. And yeah, I think the rest of the guys are like looking at them like, all right, how are we doing this going forward? In the end of the day, I think like, yeah, let's just get this going. We'll be mindful, be wise, be aware of what the numbers are, what's happening, and take it from there. But I don't think it's too soon. I think it's about time we start moving things forward, and with the vaccinations and all, you don't really hear too much bad news from it. I mean, I think there's a few out there, but who knows? I'm no doctor, man.
Yeah, with my ignorant take on it is there's so many people getting this thing and so many different factors at work that just by pure chance, there's going to be people that don't react well to it. Just like there's people that don't react well to anything in this world. But I think as they see the way they're running this is they're doing a smaller convention, a smaller program. They haven't announced any guests or programming because you really can't secure these celebrities this early on. Some of them are not going to be able to travel or are going to want to travel to California. So I think by making it a smaller event, And if any big companies like WB or Disney want to come on and do like a virtual thing, I'm sure they'll bundle that into it. But by doing it slowly, limiting the number of people that they're going to have in there, even though it is during a very busy weekend, Friday, November 26th through Sunday, November 28th, as long as they limit the tickets, as they do every year anyway, but they just do it on a much smaller scale, they can do that part responsibly.
Right. No, for sure. I agree with you. I agree with you. I think it's that's what it comes down to. It should be fine. And like you said, ignorantly as well. Like you don't know what I know as just to be a regular person. I'm no doctor here, but yeah, everybody has their own, I guess, response to certain things. And yeah, I like I said, you're hearing more good about it than bad. And yeah, I think it's like, let's move forward. And yeah, like you said, the baby steps.
That's right. Not to segue too much off the news, but this is a good opportunity for the Brocat Core member on the other side of this to get to know you in case they haven't been following too closely on the Snyder Cut news, which is a little bit impossible if they follow this podcast anyway, because it's kind of a lot of what I cover every week. But with the last year's shutdowns, I know that you are a creative individual, which I really respect that. That's something that when I was going through school, I had a artistic side to myself as well. And yours is music. Over the last year, which I think we're at about a year now since the COVID pandemic shutdowns have happened in the US at least, did you take any of that opportunity to get more projects going? Or what would you say your biggest accomplishment artistically over the last year has been?
Honestly, it was finding a way to actually network, considering going to shows and doing things of that nature was something that just was not a thing anymore, because obviously spots were closing down. So it was more about being more aggressively networking online, and not to say like, I'm the type of guy who's like, I like things to be genuine, So like, I guess that's why my approach on social media was very limited. I'm more of a face-to-face encounter kind of person. Let me get to know you, you get to know me kind of deal, whatever. So, that's what I always enjoyed about doing the footwork, out, on regular, just, physically outside, whatever. But, COVID really forced people to like, all right, if you are going to connect with anybody in any way, shape, or form, it is going to have to be online, at least for the time being. So that's one thing I would say actually bumped up was my social media presence. And yes, though, like because of time, and fortunately for me though, like, fortunate or unfortunate, how you want to look at it, I guess. But fortunately for me, I actually still had a job throughout COVID for a while there, because technically I drive trucks for a living.
Okay.
So yeah, that was one of those essential jobs that was still needed throughout the pandemic. And technically, I guess we're still going through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, it was one thing that I was still technically working. So, but then my company I was working with was one of those companies that, as throughout the pandemic, like business started slowing down. So I actually did lose, I guess, not to sound so grim here, but I did lose my job. But then at that moment, yes, with the time that I had, it was like I had more time to work on music, and then even be more active online, getting closer with my releasing Snyder Cut family, you know what I mean? And and yeah, so getting closer to people and getting more acquainted, networking more. That's really, I want to say, what happened the most for me as an artist. It really gave me that opportunity to grow through social media, and then even through this fan base, as you said, working on projects like the release the Snyder Cut anthem, or the Snyder Cut anthem for that matter, because my song was more of a celebration once we had the announcement. I did songs with even the Release the Erica group. I'm not so sure when they're gonna release that one. I don't know if you've tuned into Koj's channel lately, but I even did a song for him. So it's kind of cool, like I'm kind of like doing things even outside of my own, I guess, my own solo projects. I've connected even with producers that are, Mr. Wes Ashley Peely, he connected me with his friend or his guy, St. John Productions, and now I'm also working on a project with him in the future. So like I said, the main thing that I really got out of it was just social media networking and connecting with people. That's the biggest thing that I got out of it.
Making those connections, getting out there, getting creative, and really getting work done during a time that was, we were all kind of just at a pause. And on Twitter, I know you were kind of downplaying it, but you truly, this is, listen to that. He is a pillar of the Release the Snyder Cut movement. This is exactly why he is on that list, that graphic that I put up there, and why I wanted to have you and talk to you on again on the show. So that's amazing, the work that you've done, the anthem, and I'm sure that's not going to be the last of the projects that they're going to release. I feel like the Release the Air Cut movement is more gaining steam than anything, especially now that Ayer is more vocal about his cut and more people are getting they're becoming aware of it, especially after the Snyder Cut released. They're like, okay, well, what's the Ayer cut? You mean there's a better version of Suicide Squad? Let me look into that. So now there's more and more people looking into it, and it's growing. So I personally think that if they hold off a little bit longer, it'll get that song in front of more people. More people can celebrate. They can get hyped by it, and I'm personally looking forward to it. But I can see why maybe they're holding off for now.
Right. Yeah, it's you know, as you said, it's slowly building because there was a point where it was like, you know, both were kind of like a thing, you know, like release the Air Cut, release the Snyder Cut. But then it was like once the Snyder Cut actually became a thing, and then the movie was coming out, and then when we realized, oh, Warner Brothers has no interest in promoting this film, we got to go hard ourselves to like really get this thing going. Then it's like at that point, I think even the Air Cut community understood, like, all right, look, we'll put because I remember even being in the message groups, you know, for one of the accounts, and you know, they're like, we're gonna diet down a bit, like, you know, we're gonna put this on pause so that we can go hard for the Snyder Cut, you know. So even they knew that was the game plan going forward. But like you said, here we are, Zack Snyder's Justice League. You can't help but now want more, and now we got this new chant, the new call, restore the Snyderverse, and with that included is the Release the Air Cut, you know, along with your Make the Batfleck movie. Well, which reminds me, I actually even got it, like they even hit me up to do a song for them as well. So
oh, nice.
Yeah, it's like I said, they're keeping me busy.
It sounds like it. That's a good kind of busy, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, no, I'm having fun with it.
That's great. That's great. We're going to circle back around to the Snyderverse at the very end of these news headlines, but I definitely wanted to touch on that so that everyone kind of knew exactly who I was talking to here. The big thing on the comic book side, I manage a comic book shop, and this is something that keeps coming up with my regulars and subscribers, is that after 40 years with the company, Marvel Comics has announced that it will no longer be distributing through Diamond distributors. They are the ones that send all of these books from Image Comics, Boom Studios, used to be DC Comics, but they've also moved on from Diamond. But Marvel Comics will instead exclusively distribute through Penguin Random House, which is owned by Disney. So they're keeping all of that in-house. They're keeping all of that money within the company. Penguin will officially start distributing Marvel titles on October 1st, so we have several months so that my back-end stuff can get into place. I'm probably going to have to do my final orders on a separate day of the week now, 3 times a week, because DC needed their own separate day, and then the other companies need theirs, and I bet you Disney's going to want their separate day too. So I think for the readers themselves, they're not going to notice any changes until maybe next year, because that's when Disney's going to decide whether they want to cut down on titles or if they want to raise the prices on some books, just like DC has over the last couple of months. But I think it's going to be a while before we see any of that. But according to Marvel, they wanted to grow the market. They wanted to be more efficient. They wanted to be more reliable. I think if we really read in between the lines, it's just Disney keeping it all within the company and trying to increase that profit margin.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was actually, you know, looking at who Penguin Random House is, and low key, here's the funny part is I didn't even know Disney owned, but now that you say that, Now it even makes more sense. Like, and yeah, I think that's what it is. They're just trying to see where they can save themselves some money, make more of a profit. Disney's a smart company as far as that's concerned. So if that, I'm pretty sure that's what that move is about. But Random House has been around for a while too, so that's the interesting part about it. But they're worth a lot of money too. I was looking at their worth. I think it was what was it? 3.55 billion. So they're a successful company as it is in general. So they've been doing this for a while though. That's what I did look at. They're not. It's not like they're new on the block. They've been doing this for a while, except what I guess with other books, other publishings. And then I saw that they have free shipping. So I don't know if that's also something to gain there. I don't know how, for a comic book store, is that more beneficial for you? I'm assuming.
That's pretty huge, yeah. Because if we can save on shipping, they're going to eat the cost of shipping, is what they were saying, for any comic shops that want to open an account directly through them. If we stay through Diamond, which is they're still going to distribute Marvel Comics, but now Diamond is a customer of Penguin, we have to pay the shipping costs as we do today.
Okay, so I'm gonna assume you guys are probably gonna look to like establishing your own account with Publish or Penguin. With Penguin.
We already have one because of DC. DC has their trade paperbacks through Penguin as well now instead of Diamond, so we can just continue ordering through them. And we don't get free shipping for the DC books, but we will with these single issues when we start ordering through them. So we're probably going to go for the free shipping unless Diamond decides to also eat the cost just so that they can retain the customers. I don't see them doing that, but if they do, just for ease of use and because we already have our system in place, then we'd stick with Diamond. But I think most shops are just going to go for that free shipping.
Right, of course. Why not? Why not?
President and CEO of Diamond, Steve Geppi, who is totally not a mob boss at all. If you've heard the podcast over the last year, like even if you look at the picture of the guy, I'm like, this guy belongs in Gotham. He's at the Gotham docks. He's working every night. This is all a front. Especially when we get boxes at the store where they'll send a giant box with one tiny book in it and a ton of empty space, but then they'll throw in like bubble wrap just to fill out all of that. And we're like, there used to be drugs here. And then they repackaged it up and they threw a bunch of bubble wrap.
Right. It made its way to one warehouse before it made its way to you.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So his quote was, quote, "We value our almost 40-year relationship with Marvel and are pleased that we will continue selling Marvel products to the direct market and other channels," end quote. As I mentioned, he's saying this because they'll just be a customer of Penguin. So to them, they're trying to encourage people to like, no, this isn't the end of a relationship. We're still working with Marvel. And they are still releasing books on Wednesdays, which is good. DC does theirs on Tuesdays, but we just release all of them on Wednesday because it's easier for us to just put the books out on one night and take care of them on one day. So that's where we'll continue. Anyone that's a Marvel reader, again, I wouldn't worry and stress too much until late this year, maybe next year. But I don't think readers are going to be affected. They're not going to be the ones that they just want their books on Wednesdays. They're still going to get them on Wednesdays, and that's all that matters. It's going to be the comic shops that are going to have to go through a pretty big change. The last non-Snyder Cut news story that we have this week comes from Netflix, the second best, at least my second favorite streaming service. They're going to be adapting 2 Keanu Reeves projects for Boom Studios based on the current 12-issue BRZRKR comic book. The first of these projects is going to be a live action film that Keanu will star in and produce. And it's going to follow the 12-issue maxi series for BRZRKR. Have you seen any of this, the big Kickstarter that they did last year, or any of this news?
Actually, I just saw the trailer, which, I mean, hearing Keanu Reeves' voice, I'm like, I hope this is like all, like, or if they don't plan on doing it, I hope they do. At one point, if they get into the audio comic book game, that would be dope, just to hear Keanu Reeves do his thing, but it's interesting because this wasn't really on my radar till we discussed, or you sent me the notes, and I'm like, and I'm reading it. I'm like, yo, I really should really get into this comic. It actually looks like it's actually pretty good, because as I'm reading the summary of it, I'm like, I'm getting like maybe this is just because like I'm a DC fan, but immediately I kind of got like the one person that comes to my mind was Randall Savage. You
Yes.
know, that's immediately who came to my mind because of like the story they give this character. You know, so I'm like, oh snap, that's kind of cool. You know, but yeah, I'm definitely interested into looking to that trailer. Really, if you haven't seen it, it's a pretty good trailer. Keanu Reeves' voice narrating. It's like I said, if they haven't done audio comic books, or if that is something they're doing, that's the route they should be going.
I hope he does voice himself in the anime series that they're going to be doing for this as well. Netflix, whenever they take on a project, they go big with it. And
Yep.
this is one of those examples. They're doing it with Zach on Army of the Dead. It's one of those things they're doing in anime as well as the regular adaptation or the live action film.
Live action. Yep.
So it sounds like they're in it for probably even more than the film and then the anime in the future. They probably will have a contract or some option on the contract to do another film and another set of comic books.
I mean, that's Netflix being aggressive, in my opinion. Like, you know, not to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed by Netflix. You know, they're very there's a reason why they are for you, even for me, the second best streaming service out there. They're just very aggressive with how they do business. And the fact that they came across this, they're doing a live action film. I mean, Keanu Reeves, that's money. You know what I'm saying? That's money there. And even doing an anime of it, that's like, you know, and like you said, I would hope that, yes, that also means Keanu Reeves would be voicing his own character. Yeah, it's genius. It's a genius move, a power move, and I'm liking it, man. I'm liking it. Netflix doing their thing.
This is exactly why they have that key to success today of continuing and still being relevant. They take these chances on these projects, things like Berserker, which could have easily gone. Keanu Reeves is not a cheap actor to get. This is someone that you're going to pay top dollar for. The John Wick movies really did wonders for him after The Matrix, especially. There was like that period in between. And that really blew him up into A-list once again, especially with people our age. That's something I really noticed as I was going through this past holiday season. John Wick merchandise, it would sell. Any Father's Day that would come up, John Wick, the comic and the statue would always sell. So people love the actor. They'll follow him on anything. They're picking up this book knowing that it's going to be a Netflix adaptation. And I think it's funny that that's a good comparison, calling Vandal Savage. And I also got Old Guard a little bit, like a mix between Old Guard and John Wick. So he's like an immortal, and he's trying to find a way to die, and that's kind of how it's going to continue throughout these 12 issues. The first issue, just kind of like a short summary. It's all action. It's all blood and gore. And then you get a little bit of story. So I was telling a customer today, I'm like, well, you know, if you like the John Wick movies, you'll like Berserker. So,
right. Oh, that's awesome.
And he goes, I'll just wait for the movie. And I'm like, all right.
I mean, I wonder if the movie is going to be its own story, or is it going to be directly from the comic? You know, like, because if that is the case, then I could see why maybe you don't want to read the comic until you get the movie, you know, just because you don't want it to like ruin, you know, or, you know, like not just ruin it, but, you know, some people have that issue of like, they'd rather go into a movie surprised by what's happening rather than, you know, a direct adaptation of something that already is.
There's really no way of winning, because I bring up Old Guard again. I watched the film and I didn't read the book, but we were selling out of it when the Old Guard hit Netflix. And one of my regulars, he bought the trade paperback after he had seen the movie, and he was like, I really enjoyed the movie, so I want to read what happens next. Read the first volume, came back the next week, and he goes, this is exactly the movie, scene for scene. And I'm like, oh, so it's like a direct adaptation. That's cool. He's like, no, but it was like exactly the same. There was nothing different about it. So in my mind, I'm going, it's good that they stayed faithful to the material. But then if it's not different, then people are like, why isn't there something new in here? So there's no winning no matter what. If you change the story, you know, why did they change it from the book? But then now it's the same. So I have a feeling if Netflix is going to handle it like Old Guard, then it's going to be probably a scene for scene remake of the comics.
Right.
Which is fine. Like it's also,
Like, there's no, it doesn't make a break for me, to be honest. Although I will say I do appreciate taking different directions from what is done in the comics. Not to jump there, but just to kind of say like that's actually why I like I guess you could say the Snyderverse. What Zach did with the DC content and characters that he's took on is because like yes, there was a lot of comic references or even the animated series inside his his movies, inspirations, I guess you could say, or depictions. But for the most part, he still did his own stories, so it was still fresh. That's why I think I really, out of all the comic book genre movies out there, that's why his is top tier for me. But again, not to say that it makes or breaks it for me, because I mean, look at Marvel. They try and stick more to the comic book stories, somewhat switching it up a bit, and it's successful for them. So, but yeah, I personally though I do like a fresh take on characters. Opposite from what's in the comic or in the cartoon for that matter.
Well, what's nice about the way that Zach does it is at their core, he gets all of the what makes the character who they are, and everything around them might be different, or the story they're telling might be fresh, but at the core it's still Batman, it's still Superman, It's still Wonder Woman, which is really nice. And I think that's where I think some people kind of miss that mark, where superficially they'll say, oh, non-smiling Superman, that's not Superman or whatever. And it's like, but if you look at these stories, and there's plenty of smiling in Man of Steel, but if you look at these stories, they're still beat for beat the character. They're still Superman. And I think that's one of the things where if you try to add too much, I don't even want to say too much, but if you try to add some depth to these characters, that's when people start getting lost in the translation. And that's not saying that they're not looking deeper into it or they're not really analyzing. It's just that for some people, they'll stick whatever they see at first impression. That's going to be what they stick with, unfortunately. So I think that's where, and I'm grateful that Zach does take those chances, because it would have been so much easier for him to paint by the numbers. But instead, he's doing what he does. He's an artist. He's going to tell his story, and people that enjoy it are going to come along for it. And there's tons of people that are coming along for it. HBO Max numbers, restore the Snyderverse. People are coming around to his movies again. They're going back and seeing BVS and suddenly changing their mind on it, which is great, because that's more support for the future. So I think that's where stays respectful for all of that, and people like you and I can enjoy it, and some of us have enjoyed it for many years, but for others, welcome aboard.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Well, let's talk about Zach and Netflix and what the Snyder Cut future might look like. There was this rumor of Netflix and HBO Max being in sort of a bidding war to get exclusivity to Zach. Have you heard any more rumors to that or any truth to it?
Probably just as much as you have. What we do know for sure is Zach already does have, his projects lined up, set in stone, contract signed, and all that with his Army of the Dead over Netflix. That's not changing. That's already set in stone. They're moving forward, full forward with that. And that's that even the animated, I guess, stories that they're gonna do through, Army of the Dead universe. So again, that's we're looking back at, like how you said, Netflix and its longevity, how it's been lasting, how it remains. They are technically the pioneers of all this, right? They did it first, so they got the blueprint already down, but they keep making those moves, the risks that make them the best competitor out there. As far as exclusivity to Zach, between HBO Max and Netflix, I think this success of Zack Snyder's Justice League, they see it, and I'm pretty sure it's got them wanting more. So I do not see why they would lose out on that. Maybe Warner Brothers was hoping it was a one and done, but they don't have the final say so.
Nope.
They really don't. So if AT&T or HBO Max, Warner Media for that matter, say no, we're gonna continue this. Now the question is, and maybe you have more insight on this, is would it be that do they have the luxury of being able to continue the Snyderverse, or would that be more contracts? Is it something about buying off the characters? Because one thing's for sure is that Zack Snyder's Justice League, that belongs to HBO Max.
Yeah.
They own that property. That much for sure is clear. But the question is, and maybe, like I said, you have insight, is anything that follows or anything that can come out of this, whether it is the Batfleck movie, whether it is maybe a Deathstroke movie or series, whatever they decide to do going forward, would it be that since technically AT&T owns Warner Brothers, or Warner Media owns Warner Brothers, that they can just go ahead and start making DC comic movies and DC comic related content? Or is that more contracts, things that they might have to buy out, or how does that work?
I think you're on the right path with it being an AT&T HBO Max property. The way that when Dan DiDio a few years back, he was the head of DC Comics Publishing years back, he was talking about how one of the comic owners said, how come you don't have the TV shows? Because the CW Arrowverse was huge at that time. They were saying, how come you don't have these actors promote the comics? Like, hey, if you liked Green Arrow, check out the new trade paperback that released. And Dan was saying it's not that easy. We have to draw up contracts for those actors and for the CW, even though they're all owned by Warner Brothers, but they're all each different departments that have their own marketing budgets and everything. So I would assume that HBO Max kind of works the same way, where it has its own budgeting, it has its own department. And this would also make sense as to why Ann Sarnoff and the rest at Warner Brothers are not supportive of this, because it's not their department. If, however successful Zack Snyder's Justice League is, I don't think it benefits Warner Media all that much as it does HBO Max. So I think that's why Ann was especially very, it's great that Zack has his fans and that he got to finish his trilogy, but now we look at the future, and here's what we have over here at Warner Brothers. We've got Blue Beetle, we've got Shazam 2. These are the things we can make money on. So I think that's where some of that, like our department over here, my job relies on these being a success, and no matter how big the Snyder Cut is, that's not going to secure my gig. So I think you're right. I think it's going to be all HBO Max. And you and I were talking before we recorded on, how Zach's been real quiet over the last week, Zach and Deborah, and there's that rumor, everyone on Twitter right now is going, there's probably contracts going on. Why would Joe Manganiello suddenly put #Restore the Snyderverse? Why is Subway all of a sudden once again getting back into Restore the Snyderverse and making a big thing on it? Last time they did that, it was right before we got the confirmation of release the Snyder Cut. So there's all these rumors that contracts are being drawn up. Let's see who gets on. Oh, it sounds like Joe Manganiello just signed his, because now he's promoting it again, even though he has been, but now it's like officially #Restore the Snyderverse. So that's where I'm thinking we're heading right now, and it is all HBO Max, it is all AT&T, and Warner Brothers is not our friend, and they have no interest in it, and we can kind of see why, because it's not their project, as you said.
Yeah, it isn't, and that's kind of like what people need to see here, is that when you start that movie on HBO Max, it says it's a Max original. That's telling you it belongs to HBO Max, meaning the success of that film, Warner Brothers does not profit from. Like it's not relevant to them, So yeah. If the reason they're not interested is that very reason, but this is I don't know if this is relevant, but I know we also discussed this, and this is kind of like what I've been hearing is that apparently, even prior to the Snyder Cut being a thing, a year ago, whatever, like, the announcement of it all and whatnot, supposedly the chatter the whole time at Warner Brothers was that it would come down to Dwayne Johnson, because that's who they're betting on right now, which makes sense. I get that he is the star right now. Dude, that guy has millions of followers on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
He is a star in his own right. He is top tier. So anything he does, it's a success, So that's what they're betting on. And that was apparently the talk before, was that if Warner Brothers was to continue the Snyder or with the Snyder Cut at that time, because it wasn't even Snyderverse, but the Snyder Cut, and for that to be a thing would be if Dwayne Johnson, blah blah blah, like, I guess if he's okay with it, whatever. And apparently he was an advocate for it. Again, this is he say, she say, what's going around in the rumor mill. But now the talk is that apparently, after Dwayne the Rock Johnson watching Zack Snyder's Justice League, that all his attention is on it, and that's what he wants. That he wants his Black Adam to take place within that universe, which, and you think about it, it kind of makes sense because, and I don't know if you remember DC fandom. I have to kind of go back there because Black Adam, that project, yeah, okay, it's a Warner Brothers project, cool. They promoted a bit of it, with those, I guess, comic illustrations on DC fandom with The Rock doing his audio behind it, right? And then they have, then they finally show him. The one thing that kind of was like funny to me is that, okay, we know for a fact that in your movie, Black Adam, you're facing the JSA. So why are you mentioning heroes that you want to face off with or that you're a threat to that are not in your movie? He was mentioning every league member, There's clearly an interest for him, I think personally, after this launching movie, this launch that they're going to do with him facing the JSA, there is definitely an interest for him to come up against the Justice League. And I guess now the talk is that he is so impressed by the Justice League we just seen that that's where he wants to be set in. And then the talk is also that that's the reason he wants to be an anti-hero rather than a villain, because he's looking for longevity with this character within this property. I don't know, man. Like all that to say that, Warner Brothers might want what they want, but when you have the star that you are apparently trying to revolve your content around, he's asking to be in the Snyderverse. What do you do then? You know what I mean? So you're gonna have to accommodate. You know what I'm saying? So at that point, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there's still so many things up in the air about it. Yeah, sure. Like maybe, and here's the thing. This is the beauty about it, is that I feel like overall Zack is going to win like double the portion of what he would have won initially. Now he's going to win double the portion because we know for sure AT&T and HBO Max want more of him. That there's no doubt in my mind about that. But if now, like, again, if The Rock being the star of Warner Brothers that they're trying to cater to, and if he says, well, I want to be in that universe, you know what I mean? So that tells me that means Zack is going to be gaining both from Warner Brothers and from HBO Max. Yeah, man. Overall, I think Zack's going to win. I think that's the overall summary is Zack's winning regardless after this film, and whether it's AT&T and HBO Max or all three companies saying, all right, well, I guess Zack Snyder's the future, yeah, he's winning, man. And that's what I want to see. I do see Black Adam being in his universe. I can see that being the case. I always thought to myself, even after, like I said, when The Rock said that way back in August during DC fandom, I'm like, that's a crazy thought to see him face up against the League, because in the end of the day, I mean, if you're familiar with the comics, is Black Adam is a team buster. He really is, so I can see that being the case. He's definitely a worthy villain to have the League face up against. And it's funny because even prior to me hearing this news, I thought to myself, I kind of, for whatever reason, had already that thought in my mind, like if they did want to connect it all together, like if they said to themselves, this movie is such a success, it seems like it's well received all around, let's build off of this again, even though we already have projects like Shazam 2, Black Adam coming out. Technically, none of them have really fully went into production to say like, oh, well, we can't switch direction. Like, no, not you can technically. And the idea would be then, how do you add characters like Black Adam and, let's just say, I guess for that matter, Shazam into that universe, or Zack's universe? And this is what I mean, where I start thinking to myself, like, if that's the route they go, Zack is going to win, because, or Zack's winning regardless. It's because we know that initially they said, no, you can't have Green Lantern, because we're going to do something with him. But if everything forces them to go his direction, then that gives him more leverage on what he can and cannot do And I think overall, if let's say, if the rumor is true and The Rock is saying this is where I want to be, that's going to give Zach all the leverage he needs. I can imagine he'd be in that, board meeting saying, I want Jon Stewart Green Lantern. This is what I'm going to do. Da, 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 and just give him full creative control. Let him do his thing. If this movie proved anything, is that let Zach do what he wants to do, and you won't regret it. And I think that's the direction it'd go. And like I said, it'd just be a matter of how do you implement these other characters into his universe. I can imagine if, let's say, The Rock does want to be an anti-hero rather than a villain. And this is all theories now. This is me just theorizing. I would imagine the encounter with Black Adam would happen before encountering Darkseid.
Yes.
Now that we know Darkseid is on his way, but he is on his way in the form of the old ways with his armada, his ships, whatever, right? But and here's the thing, it took three old gods to take on Uxas. We can already know and assume that Darkseid is way more powerful than he was at that, first moment as Uxas, and where he's at now. He's got armor now. I think the Zack Snyder's Justice League page put that question out there, like, did anyone notice, Uxas no armor and Darkseid has armor on? Wonder why, whatever. So clearly there's implications to that. So whole point is Darkseid's coming. He's coming bigger and badder and more prepared than he was the first time. And if it took three old gods, powerhouses is what I'm trying to get at, to take him on, you're gonna need a lot more this time around. So I'm not so sure Superman is enough. Or Wonder Woman. You might need guys like Green Lantern, Black Adam, Shazam, I guess, right, to take on this heavy hitter. You know what I'm saying? So, like I said, I can imagine if that's the route they do go, it would be, all right, let's have them encounter Black Adam first. So that when it comes to Darkseid coming, it's one of those things like it even benefits Black Adam to protect conduct, to side with the heroes, to go up against Darkseid, Yeah, so I mean, if that's the route they go, that's what I see happening. And honestly, it's like they should go that route. Like, like Warner Brothers needs to wake up and say, you know what, let's just go this route. Let's give Zack Snyder reign. You know what I'm saying? Give him whatever he wants to do. Hey, look, all we ask is that you use these characters, put them into your story. Get Black Adam in there. Find a way to push Shazam in there. Don't worry, we'll keep Jeff Johns out of your way. Just do what you got to do. You want Green Lantern, Jon Stewart? Perfect. Go ahead, do your thing. If they were smart, that's what they would do. We'll see. Again, this is me basing everything off of the fact that the rumor is that the talk is that Dwayne The Rock Johnson is in Warner Brothers right now saying that he wants to be part of Zack Snyder's universe.
That's the same rumor I heard too, of he wants to go through Warner Brothers before he goes through AT&T or HBO Max in that case. And if they're willing to play, then great. To circle back on what you said on Zach winning more than I think even we expected or he expected, I was prepared when this movie released to, and I think we all were, we're going to get the negative review torpedoes. We're going to get the bloggers trashing this because of the previous Snyder movies and the movement and how much we've been fighting against these reviewers and bloggers these past couple of years, that I was prepared for, like, all right, it's going to get trashed. That's fine. We need to make it a success. We need to get it trending. We need to buy the merch, all of that. But the weird thing is that most reviewers liked it. A majority of them did. A lot of bloggers liked it. The people that were trashing BVS and Man of Steel, they liked this one, even if they didn't like the previous ones. And I don't think anyone expected it to be in that situation. So that's already like the studio. That's their big thing. They love when reviewers love their movies. So that's a huge positive for them. It was their biggest trending project on HBO Max up to this point, bigger than Wonder Woman 1984, and then that was during Christmas break where people could access HBO Max. This was in the middle of March. That's massive. The app was crashing in many countries. They couldn't get it back up. It's bigger than Disney Plus at this point. and the percentage of growth was the largest than any of the streaming services out there. It is the number one app on Google. It is the number one app on the iDevice store. I don't know what they call it, the Apple Store. And like it's the number one app above TikTok even as of today, as of right now when we're recording. So all of the chips are in anything that possibly could have happened went well in Zach's favor, which is amazing to me because I don't think he even expected that. So the fact that now the rumor of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson wanting in on the Snyderverse, that being a huge get for Justice League 2 and 3 when and if those happen. And I think that it is very feasible because I was just telling Nick, I guessed it on his Buds, Bros, and Superhero show that if they do if they restore the Snyderverse, continue doing it, I'm like, look, it's really outside of if Zach wants to do another Wonder Woman or if he wants to do a Wonder Woman or if he wants to do a Batman, whatever, that's all not even on the table right now. But if he finishes Justice League 2 and 3, he'd film it as one movie, I'm assuming, and then they would release it as two separate projects, and he can make them as long as he wants, 4 hours each if he wants, because it'll probably release on HBO Max. But that, to me, is one project that he would film. That's one big thing. All the actors can just come in for one project, and that would be it. His 5-film arc would be right there. Yep. So to me, that's pretty feasible. And if The Rock wants in on that, that's going to get a much bigger budget. It's going to get the exposure that every studio wants. Sometimes these actors get hired because they know they're going to push it on social media, and there's going to be people that show up, like me and Liam Neeson. I'll show up for every one of his movies, no matter what it is. So, The Rock, someone who has millions of followers, they're going to show up for Black Adam and for Justice League 2 and 3 if he ends up being on there. So I hope those rumors are true. That's a huge positive. I hope that it really ends up being that he saw the movie and he's like, I want to be in the Nightmare world. I want to be in the army fighting Darkseid in Justice League 3. And I think in the next week, supposedly is what I'm hearing, is when we're going to hear something big as far as either HBO Max numbers or a possible future to the Snyderverse.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming too. Somebody made a good point. Louis Santano did make a good point on what Warner Bros. May be trying to pull. But I mean, overall, like, if you have any sense at this point, it's like, don't, in the words of Bruce Wayne, BVS, don't believe everything you hear, son. Base your actual facts off of what HBO Max and AT&T say. At this point, you really can't trust so much what Warner Brothers is saying or doing, especially related to Zach. But all that to say, Louis Santana was trying to say like they might be trying to promote the success of HBO Max and saying, oh, thanks to Zack Snyder's Justice League and Godzilla vs. Kong, these are the numbers, that we got, and it's like I could see them doing that. I could, trying to make it seem like it wasn't like Zack's, which kind of sucks because like I think personally Godzilla vs. Kong holds its own ground. I'm sure. It'll do its own numbers. It's going to be success. Actually, I think I've already heard that it is successful in China, which I guess makes sense, right? It's a movie that honestly does stand on its own, and it should bring its own success. So I'm hoping if they do bring the numbers, they're more accurate rather than and showing like what one movie did and what another movie did, whatever, blah blah blah. But yeah, I'm sure I'm thinking it's restore the Snyderverse news, like you said, why would Joe Manganiello, post what he posted? And because I want to say even interviews prior to the movie coming out, he I think even said, depending on this movie would determine whether or not he gets his own series, that he's already in talks with HBO Max about a series. If I remember correctly, there was an interview where he stated something like that. So if that's the case and he seems gun-ho about it, I'm going to assume this is what it is. Because here's the truth. Like, you watch this movie, man, I keep saying it, Zach, and this is why it's like, yo, can you guys wake up? Zach in these movies has been setting cornerstones for different movies to be done. And he's been doing that since Man of Steel, technically. But when you get to BVS, it became even more clear. Like, all right, here's a cornerstone. Build on that. I'm just giving you a cornerstone. I'm not trying to build anything for you. but here's a cornerstone. Build around that, and you do your own house. Whatever house you want to build, you build it. So in that sense, it's like these are the pieces I'm giving you to this character, but you do your own movie, and that's what I love about Zach. It's like he's not trying to be Kevin Foggy. You know what I'm saying? I am in charge of everything. No, he's just like, look, I'm doing my movies the way I want, and the stories that I want to tell with these characters. If we want to make it a cohesive universe, here are some things you guys could use to connect it all together. But overall, in the end of the day, you do whatever you want to do with your movie. We saw him do that with Wonder Woman, right? And it was like as long as Patty Jenkins sticks within the unless just the original Wonder Woman. Honestly, Wonder Woman 84, bro, I don't even consider that canon. But anyways,
no, it's not.
So, but according to canon of what's in the Snyderverse, right? BVS. I went away from a century of horrors. You take that, you take the photo, add that to the Wonder Woman movie, boom, it's connected. But you do whatever you want to do. You know what I mean? And that's exactly what they did with Wonder Woman. Same thing with Suicide Squad. Technically, it's like Superman's dead, Batman is doing his thing, trying to get the team together, and that was the connecting thread. Although now I'm convinced after watching this movie and then hearing what David Ayer said about what his original vision for the movie was in his original cut, I'm convinced there was a lot more threads that connected. For instance, the Mother Box of Men, where he said that Enchantress actually was supposed to be using that. That she was actually technically working with Darkseid, or not Darkseid, Steppenwolf. That was his original vision for it. That she was supposed to have parademon soldiers rather than these other weird soldiers we got in the Suicide Squad. So, I'm convinced now there is more threads that connected to that. But now when we get to this film, it's like, I said it before, this movie connects. And this is funny, even though I know Zach said otherwise, but I think it's clear that he only said it because of the deal he made with Warner Brothers in order to make this happen. And that's that supposedly Aquaman wasn't canon. But tell me you did not watch this movie and say, this actually connects more to Aquaman rather than what we got in Justice League. Yeah. So that was one cornerstone he laid. Again, if this would have been the movie we got, of course, right? If this would have been the movie we got initially in 2017, this would have been what launched Aquaman. This would be what launches the Batman movie from Ben Affleck, and whatever crazy plan Deathstroke has for Batman in that movie. This would have been the launch for Cyborg movie, Flash movie, heck, even a New Gods movie. Like there's so much stuff in cornerstones in this movie alone that it would have allowed people to like build on, and and it doesn't have to be all Zach. Although I mean that would be cool, but I know that's not what Zach wanted. Zach wanted his 5-movie story arc, and that was it. And here's a bunch of cornerstones that you guys can keep building and keep launching and keep going in your own direction with. And that's what he wanted, and I'm sure, and if they have any sense, that's exactly what they'll do. That's exactly what they'll do. They'll say, okay, fine, we'll use this these cornerstones Zach's given us, and we'll build off of that. Like I said, I imagine if like Dwayne The Rock Johnson really is wanting into this universe, it'll be like, all right, well, just Zach, we're gonna let you do your thing. Just can you find a way to add these characters into your movies? I imagine maybe in the second Black Adam movie or something like that, it'll be when he faces the League, something along those lines. Who knows? But if they have any sense, they this is the direction they'd go. And Zach is winning overall, man. That's just the most important part. This movie, like you said, overall success. A lot of people were expecting the negative reviews and stuff, just because of past scenarios. But it's clear, like, that didn't happen. It's overall well received, and I think this film also allows you to go back. I mean, not for me. I love Man of Steel and BVS regardless. So I think that's also what's happening now with that. Is like now you can go back and watch Man of Steel and BVS and knowing where it went and where it's going. When you watch Zack Snyder's Justice League, it's like, okay, that's a full, it makes sense now for those who felt they were confused, I think that's what this film did as well. It allows you to appreciate those other two films if you didn't like them at first.
Mm-hmm. I do want to touch on, or kind of end on, the future, on where you think we're going to sit at once all of this clears up and contracts are done and we get more news in the next couple of weeks or so. But I touched on it a little bit last week, but I kind of want to hear your take on it, and not necessarily just on this narrative that THR, I think it was, that just released this article on the toxicity of fandoms like Star Wars or like Justice League, is what the headline read, but also the fact that Warner Brothers keeps putting out these casting news and these casting headlines around the same time that Restore the Snyderverse was trending, or just trying to detract and take away the attention from this movie, and instead say, hey, look at our projects, or putting out these hit pieces of, and it's obvious that it's Warner Brothers. All of a sudden, all of these big companies are talking about the toxic movements and they're all connecting it to the Snyder Cut. Now, do you think that that is all actually a sign of, we're doing something, we're changing things? And yes, we got to fight that narrative now too, but this is actually also them telling us that we are in fact messing with Warner Brothers' plans in favor of the Snyderverse.
It's funny because it's like, yeah, it's definitely them upset. I think that we change things. It's that it's like that famous quote, or not famous quote, but Dark Knight, conversation between Joker and Batman, and he's like, we've changed things, like, there's no going back, so that is what we're seeing here. Like, yes, we did change things, and there is no going back, even if they wanted to. And it's kind of like foolish that they would want to, considering, again, when you really see how well received this movie now is. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't even know anymore if are these accounts that you do see lingering that kind of do have like a toxic, I guess, narrative about them. Are they really actual accounts, or are they just like trolls or bots? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's like, and I think that's what they have to look at. They have to look at the overall voice. You can't just look at these singular voices that are, I can't lie. Some things are kind of crazy out there, but you can't look at these singular voices and try and say like that's the whole fandom. Like, don't do that. I think that's stupid to do. And it goes back to the whole like, oh, one bad apple, messes up the whole batch. But it's like, at what point do you realize cliches aren't all true? You know what I mean? And I think that's like, wake up and smell the coffee. Like, not all cliches are true. And that's definitely one of them. Like, not one bad apple shouldn't mess up the whole batch. When it comes to people, everybody has their own voice, their own opinion. And I think the overall voice is it's not that we don't want to see what else you guys got going on. It's that we want to see you guys restore what was supposed to be. And if you want to keep doing what you want to do, go ahead and do it. And that's the overall consensus, I think, amongst, whether it's that, some people do like what else they're doing, or whether it's that you feel like, not my cup of tea, and this is what I want you to do. Either way it goes, it's like, do whatever you want to do, as long as you do this here, and that's restore the Snyderverse. Not to downplay any other fandom, but I think the reality is we've done more as a fandom together to have the studios, or I guess the execs, the ones that make the choices, hear us and do what we want more successfully than any other fandom. I have yet to see Star Wars have their win. That I think is going to be a bit harder. Maybe because, I just feel like that's a very divided fandom compared to ours. Some people actually liked the direction they were going, while others are like, no, we want the original Lucas legacy to continue. So that, that's a very divided one. It's funny because it's kind of like you somewhat saw that over here in the DC fandom as far as films were concerned, but it was a bit different. We were like more like, no, give us the new direction of what Zach was trying to do, rather than sticking to your old formula of, and not even old formula. That's kind of like, and I think that's why there was more of a win here, is just because like there was not really something set in stone as far as like how DC films are done. So I think that's why. But all that to say again is that we've actually done something. We've done more as a fandom for what we wanted, and even what we wanted to see done for the director and the cast and crew to get their win. And then even what we've done with AFSP, we've just done a lot, man.
Mm-hmm.
We've done a lot, you know. And I think that's why out of all the fandoms, for any studio to have, we're the most feared, because it's like we've found ways to actually be productive and noticeable. You
Yeah.
know, we've done more than just signing off petitions. We've crossed thresholds. You know what I mean? We've crossed barriers, as you said earlier. Subway joined the cause way back then. Wendy's. You know, we just done things that are just like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like it's crazy when you really think about it. But we just found a way to actually be productive and be noticed and be heard, whether the studio wants to hear us or not. You're going to hear us one way or another. And like, you know, that's how it happened before. Like it wasn't like Warner Brothers heard us, you know, we're like really trying to listen in. But no, we got the ear of Subway, we got the ear of Wendy's and all these other PRs within other companies saying, hey man, you know, there's a lot of noise happening here
Yep.
on the Twitter sphere. So why don't we you know, join in and chime in and blah 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 blah. And the next thing you know, release a Snyder Cut from all these random you know, like non film relative things, but yet it was a way to get us heard. And the next thing you know, it caught the ears and attention of like Washington Post, Hollywood Reporter, and all these other, you know, article websites and things of that nature. And it became a snowball effect,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So, but again, it's because we just found ways to get attention, you know, more so than any other fandom has ever done. And yet again, we've changed things and there's no going back. We've changed things and there's no going back.
We became experts of social media. We became experts of what was we're about to, Banu was just talking about it on the film Exiles. We're about to become experts on owning stock, because it's like, what else do we have to do to gain a seat on this thing with AT&T and get some things done? And you know, we'll
Exactly.
get there. We'll figure out some way of doing these things, and it does get done. And I'm glad you mentioned that. We got to make that very clear, and I think we have, that we are not saying, and that's that misconception that's coming up again of, you know, cancel out all of these other movies because we want Justice League 2. And people confuse that with, and I say it myself, I'm like, I have no interest in seeing the Pattinson movie. I have no interest in seeing a Wonder Woman 3 if it's still going in this direction. I definitely have no interest in Shazam 2. They take that as us going, well, you just don't want those movies to happen. No, I'm voting with my fucking dollar. You know, I will.
Right.
Well, I rather rewatch the Snyder Cut again, or buy BVS in its IMAX presentation 4K that just came out, and my dollars are going to go there. I'm not going to support that, but that doesn't mean that I'm saying you guys should pull that from the theater and you should not make that happen. We're going to go fucking economy 101, demand and supply and demand. I'm going to go and put my dollars where I want to see more of it. And,
Exactly.
and if you do that, then that's toxic. If you have an opinion, that's toxic. And I think it's way too freely used, the word, that it's completely losing its meaning of, you know, if you make fun of the MCU, or if you make fun of, that's immediately toxic. If you put up a meme, then that's toxic. It's amazing to me how desperate people are to label this fandom as toxic by just us existing and saying that we want our Justice League 2 and 3. It's incredible to me, but I'm glad that you made that distinction of, look, if they want to keep making those movies, that's great, but I'm going to be over here watching my thing. I'm going to be over here buying the 4K edition of this thing over here.
Exactly. No, exactly. That's what it comes down to. It's not that we're trying to cancel out anything else. We're just making it clear where our interest lies. You know, here's the thing, like, I couldn't watch a Marvel movie. That's not an issue with me. I could watch this new Batman, whatever, when it comes out. I'll probably watch it. You know, I'll probably watch anything else that comes out just because I'm a film person. But there's a difference between watching it for the first and only time and then watching something that impacts me so much that I'll actually invest into getting the actual cut when it comes out. You know, the DVDs or the Blu-rays, whatever format it comes out. There's a difference between, this movie is so good, I gotta go see it more than once in theaters. The rewatch value, you know, and I'm sorry, you know, half the, you know, movies you've come out with after Justice League,
Mhm.
Justice League included, don't have rewatch value to me. You know,
No.
honestly, like Wonder Woman 84, man, it just complete bomb in my opinion. It was entertaining at the very least to watch it that one time. I've never watched it again. Same thing with Birds of Prey. It was entertaining enough to watch the first time, but never watched it ever again. Shazam is probably the only one that I've probably watched more than once, and more so because I was watching it with like my nieces and nephews.
Mhm.
Because it is a kid friendly movie. So all right, like, we can watch this, whatever. I guess and then if they want to watch it, but that's probably the only other movie that I've actually watched more than once, or Aquaman I've actually watched more than once as well. Not to say that I don't have my nitpicks with that film, or not Aquaman, but with Shazam, I'm saying. But all that to say again is like, it's not about canceling out anything else. It's just where am I going to invest, like you said, most of my dollars into? This is my money,
Mhm.
So I have the freedom of deciding where I want to spend it. Hey, you want to watch these other movies? Go ahead. If you don't have to. This idea that, oh, you should watch everything because if you're a true DC fan or a true comic book fan,
Such bullshit.
it's yeah, it is, because it's like this is film we're talking about here.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, this is film. Don't get it twisted. This is film. That gives it's its own beast. You know what I mean? It's its own lane. It's this. This is personally why I do feel like if the studio had any sense into what Zach was doing, they would realize that what he was actually doing was going to be the overall winning factor for them. And what that means is even fans who aren't comic book fans appreciate those movies because they're different from your average comic book movies. And they actually have more depth to them
Mhm.
that someone who's not a comic book fan can still watch and be like, yo, that was a good film, because it's a film, you
Exactly.
know? That's what they also had to be looking at. And it's like I don't know, they just weren't looking at that. They weren't realizing, like, look, movies are movies, whether it's comic book characters or not.
Mhm.
You still need to give it that due respect, of filmography, cinematography, all that. And that's something I feel Zach appreciates and understands when it comes to translating what he likes in the comics and in the cartoons and putting it on the film. He just knows how to bring it there and make it something that even an average moviegoer who doesn't know anything about these comic book characters can actually watch and say, that was a good movie. Not because it's about comic book characters that they like, but no, just because they can watch it and say, I was entertained. I was brought in by the story, the depth of it all. It was compelling enough. You'd be surprised how many people I've come across, and even people that I know within my circle who aren't comic book fans, but they like these movies because they're just more relative to what they like in a film, rather than going to see and again, not to crap on them, but rather than to go see a Marvel movie that they're tired of, because it's like
Mhm.
it's a comic book movie. It's kid friendly, it's not their cup of tea. Zach was giving a lane that was very much needed, even for the comic book genre on film, and that allowed there to be a room for film to be to actually be done, with these comic book characters. That's what I feel he was doing. And that's one thing he understood, and I think that's what they need to see is like, look, and even for those who think it's all about the comic book characters, it's like, nah, it's not just about the comic book characters. We're all fans of DC here. I love their comics, their animated series. I love them all, whatever. But like, don't get it twisted. Like, I do have a preference when it comes to film,
Mhm.
and what Zach is doing, that's my preference. Again, we're not trying to cancel out anything else, but we want them to just restore Zach's vision and let him finish doing what he wants. If we can all go in that direction, even on the Warner Brothers side, if they can wake up and smell the coffee, then great. But if not, oh well, you're lost. I
Mhm.
hope, I could only hope that HBO Max, which I not hope, I'm convinced that that's what's happening, is that HBO Max and AT&T see the benefit of having Zach finish his work, with them, if that's what it takes.
That's very well put, and that's exactly why there's a difference there between Zach and your average comic book film, which is fine. If you like those, great. You know, everyone's going to like their own thing, but that's the distinction there, and that's exactly how I see these movies as well. I do want to close out today's episode on you were mentioning the HBO Max universe, and how optimistic are you that the Snyderverse is going to rely or is going to be exclusively on HBO Max with maybe theatrical releases? But not only that, I think Justice League 2 and 3 is a given at this point. And I don't want to sound like, you know, that we're resting on our laurels or whatever, and kind of just, we still got to fight every single day. But given the minimum of Justice League 2 and 3, optimistically, what else do you see personally coming to HBO Max from the Snyderverse? You had mentioned the Deathstroke project, but are there any other things that you think or would want to see as the Snyderverse is restored on HBO Max?
No, great question. One, I agree. I do believe we are going to get part 2 and 3, or whether that part 2 is a 2-part movie. I think they are going to see that through. Personally, in my opinion, I think we will get that Deathstroke. And as I said earlier, like, I'm definitely advocating for the release the Ayer cut, David Ayer Suicide Squad. I think that's something they should look into, and then get that on there. Especially because from what I've heard, it's like a film that's technically already done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it wouldn't take much to like finish. But I think what happens there is, like, I think that is a contractual thing between Warner Brothers, because technically they own that property. So I don't know if that's what it is. And then the Batman movie, man, like,
yes,
let Ben Affleck do his movie the way he wanted to, the one that he was, planning to connect to Zack Snyder's universe. I mean, just why not, man? You know, like I said, this movie sets so many cornerstones, man, so many. It makes no sense not to. And I want, if there's room for new gods, give us new gods. You know, I know there's a lot going on in the background, and I think what it's coming down to is they're really trying to figure out what direction to go.
Yeah.
Whether, you know what I'm saying? That's really what is happening here. And that's
it got complicated.
It got complicated, exactly. And that's why we're not hearing much noise about it. It's because they're trying to, it's almost like they're treading carefully, because I think what it is like they're still trying to figure out if Warner Brothers could do something here. Because I mentioned this to somebody a while ago, because just watching this movie, and like I said, the New Gods thing is a real thing. Like, you watch this movie, and there's no way you can't tell me that there was an idea to make a movie about how Uxas becomes Darkseid, how he what is it that Steppenwolf does that makes him lose disfavor, or be disfavorable with Darkseid. All these things, like how, what is what happened that, Darkseid forgot where the anti-life equation was. You know what I'm saying? There's more stories to be told there.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly feel there's so much. Even I don't know if you caught but that spider thing. Tell me that wasn't supposed to be like more like of a Starro type technology thing going on there. Like, that's what came to my mind when I saw that. Like, especially the way it looked on on everybody's head. I'm like, Starro?
Mm-hmm.
Like, all that to be said, and it's like there's stories to be told here that it'd be crazy for them not to like try and figure out what they can do from this point going forward. But then I recalled this interview with Deborah Snyder where she was like, they asked, I guess, who she'd want to work with, and she did mention Ava DuVernay, and I know she's been in talks about doing a New Gods film. So I don't know if that's maybe Deborah trying to say, like, hey, we can work together on this New Gods film, or if that's already really what the implication is going forward after watching this movie, after seeing how well the New Gods in these films were received, and saying, yeah, if Ava DuVernay is going to do a New Gods film, it needs to be relative to what's happening here, what's already being well received.
Yep.
Because it's like, why go against the grain? Why try and say I'm going to do something different when this one's well received? I can get that if maybe this wasn't well received, but it is well received.
Mm-hmm.
So why go against the grain? Why make it complicated? So I think that's what's happening here. I think the reason why it's so quiet right now is because they're really trying to figure out, is this something we just want to have exclusively for HBO Max? or is this something we can all capitalize on and benefit from both, Warner Media or Warner Brothers side to HBO Max as well?
Mhm.
I think that's really what the talk is right now, and that's why it's very quiet. And even with Ann Sarnoff saying what she said, I feel like that's more so like, let me not feed the flames just yet. Because this is what we do know, what we have lined up for sure, for sure.
Mhm.
So this is what I have to promote. But at the same time, it's like, this is, as you said, this isn't to lower our guard. This is to let it be known that if we keep fighting the good fight, keep making sure we're heard, get the attention, they'll have no choice but to actually like say, okay, there's money here to be had. The movie was well received. There's many things we can do going forward from that movie. Maybe we should consider actually doing it. And I think that's what's happening behind the scenes. So, like you said, we have to keep doing our part. Keep promoting it, keep talking about it, keep letting it be known that what we want is for them to restore the Snyderverse. In however form or fashion that is, and that's for most who do know, that's releasing the air cut, that's making the Batfleck movie, that's, hey, if Deathstroke wants a series, give him the series. There's New Gods films that could be told from this movie. Get Cyborg back on. There's just so much you could do, man. From after watching this movie, it's like it's kind of a no-brainer, but at the same time, I think a lot of it is contractual, and I think a lot of it is probably just like, well, this is what we're gonna do, so we don't know, blah blah. But yeah, overall, as long as we do our part, there's still hope, or not hope. There's I want to say guarantee for the future for Snyder and his universe, whether that is solely through HBO Max exclusively or all around both, film, Warner Brothers, and streaming with HBO Max.
It is always an interesting week in the Snyderverse fandom, and this was no exception. Always something happening, always speculation, and always a fight to continue on for 4 years at this point. And I'm very happy to have gone through it this week with you, Vega, someone who I know really has also pushed hard for us to enjoy the film that we can now with like I said last time, with these computers in our pockets if we wanted to, or on our television. We can now watch the Snyder Cut. It still seems absolutely unreal. And again, I want to thank you so much for not just in the past when we did the roundtable, but also for, we met in person, which was a lot of fun, and you jumping on here and doing the podcast this week to help us cover this news and also the Snyderverse and what the future may be. So I want to thank you once again for coming on, and I want you to tell them, where can they find you? Where can they continue this conversation?
Awesome. Well, first, let me just say thank you, Dan, for having me on. It was my absolute honor, my absolute pleasure. As you said, we met in person, and that was fun, to actually get to meet you in person. I think that's one of the most wonderful things about this community that we've been able to be a part of, is that it's a lot more than just fanning out as fanboys. Mm-hmm. It's something deeper. It's something more personal. We found common ground, but at the same time, it's like we've built relationships through it all, and it's such a beautiful thing to see. How something good can come out of something that was initially bad. Mm-hmm. If I could go back and have things pan out a better way, sure. I think I had this conversation with Koji, and that was that, granted, the more positive scenario would have been Zack still have his daughter, and Warner Brothers never really go about the way they did with the business aspect of it all, and that would have been an awesome thing to have like that. But unfortunately, things happened the way it happened. But out of such a tragedy and such bad professionalism on Warner Brothers' behalf, it brought us together, and something good came out of it, and we're fighting the good fight. But again, we've created such strong relationships within the fandom that it's an amazing thing to see. I look forward to keep continuing this thing till we get exactly what we want out of the Snyderverse, for Zack, for the cast and crew members, and yeah, for anyone who wants to follow up with me and continue the conversation, you can find me on Twitter and as Vega, this Vega the Boss, at this Vega the Boss. I'm on Instagram, Vega the Boss. You can follow me on YouTube as well, or subscribe, Il Divino Vega. And that's pretty much the, where I'm at now for the most part. If you want to jump on conversations with me, I'm starting to do my own live chats, discussing certain things around entertainment and other conversations as well, But yeah, Il Divino Vega on YouTube, Vega the Boss on IG, there's Vega the Boss on Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you very much. There will be links in the show notes to today's episode. And Brokehead Core, if you want to be heard on the show, don't forget you can always leave us a voicemail. There's a link in the description as well. But otherwise, speakpipe.com/thereasonsimBroke. If you have any thoughts on the future of the Snyderverse, or if you're a comic book reader and you're a little nervous on the Marvel news, share it with us on speakpipe.com/thereasonsimBroke. Otherwise, thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you, Vega, for coming on and enjoying this world this weird reality that we're in right now, this wonderful reality that we're in, and I enjoy. I'm very grateful again, and very lucky that you came on, and that we've had amazing guests and co-hosts on over the last almost 9 years. So thank you so much, Vega, for coming on again.
Thank you for having me, Dan. Thank you.
And Brokehead Core, thank you so much. All will be well. Vega, you know that Jon Stewart was mentioned earlier. You know that footage is filmed. It's out there somewhere. Would that ruin at all the continuity of the Snyder Cut? Because we know a different character shows up at the very end, but would you want to see that Jon Stewart scene released somewhere as like a what if, or here's what happened, or are you perfectly happy with let's just wait to see him show up in Justice League 2?
Oh man, if they have it, I would love to see it. If they have it, I would love to see it. There's just, come on, with Jon Stewart, Green Lantern. Don't get me wrong. I love the fact they got Martian Manhunter. That's awesome. That's actually one of my favorite characters as well. In my opinion, underrated. But Jon Stewart, Green Lantern. If there's footage out there, please, God, yeah, let me see. But if I have to wait for him in the next film, I'm cool with that too.
Look, HBO Max, if you're listening, they keep talking about the multiverse. So how about a multiverse in which we get that ending scene instead? You put that in a Blu-ray or DVD and you just change that ending scene, we'll buy that shit too. We will. We'll fucking buy it.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.